Still have one more board member. Oh, I think she's coming in now. Great.
Sorry, I wasn't hitting the right buttons.
No worries. All right. With that, so we've got everybody. We'll go ahead and we'll call this meeting to order. Michael, if you could bring up the flag, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. Thank you. All right.
I think it's Peter, I think it's liberty and justice for all.
It probably is. I'm just trying to
truncate it.
It's been a long day.
You don't like liberty?
I do definitely believe in liberty.
It's the abridged version.
Exactly. Thank you. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
So moved.
Great. Ms. Downey, is there a second?
Sure, Kathleen.
Ms. Stowe. All right. We'll take a vote on the meeting agenda. Bernstein, yes. Stowe?
Yes.
Hirsch?
Yes.
Downey?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes, please.
Kowalski?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
And Cher?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The meeting agenda has been approved. Next order of business is our consent agenda. We've got a couple of meetings. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda, the consent agenda? Sorry, really long day.
Yep, Kathleen, so.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Joe can have it. Joe can have it.
All right, Joe, you got it. All right. So for all those in favor of the consent agenda, Bernstein is a yes. Stowe?
Yes.
Hirsch?
Yes.
Downey?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Kowalski?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
And Cher?
Yes.
All right, before moving on to our next items, I guess we've been doing this so long that I keep forgetting to read the intro at the beginning of the meeting, so let me just circle back on that. Thank you, everybody, for joining our virtual board meeting. I see we've got about 123 attendees on. Thank you all for joining us. Just a few things to point out. So the meeting is being conducted pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order 7B. Per that order, we're recording the meeting. It'll be posted on our webpage as well as our YouTube channel. Please check us out. The agenda for the meeting is on our board docs website, which you can get to off of the Greenwich Public Schools website on the Board of Education page. All of our meeting minutes, agendas, documents are there. This is a special meeting, so we're not taking public comments as such, but members of the community have the opportunity to email all of the board members via one email address. That is boardofedmembers@greenwich.k12.ct.us. Again, it's boardofedmembers@greenwich.k12.ct.us. So the meeting tonight is going to consist of discussion and possible votes. The superintendent, board members, and the cabinet. I've asked members to please stay on mute when they're not talking. Participants are supposed to state their name every time I do call on you, so that helps us. We're going to use the raise the hand function as we always do, and asking board members to keep their comments concise. And for voting, we'll do what we've just done, which is a roll call vote. And with that, I will turn it over to the superintendent for her update.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. I just have a couple of items tonight. First of all, just an update on summer school. We have about 300 students who are enrolled for either literacy or numeracy, and that is for distance learning, which means they're still at home, and they are in a new model for distance learning, which is what we call the 50-50 rule, which is 50 live, and then so we're using asynchronous and synchronous. We're excited about this summer, and we think it's going to be a really good opportunity for us to continue to grow and learn about distance learning. Along with that, we also are offering related services for our special education parents that wanted to access their speech service or counseling on-site face-to-face. This is happening at Cobb. We have about 90 who initially signed up. And once they're looking at the requirements, we'll see if all 90 still want to come. They are pretty stringent requirements. You can't have snacks at school. They have to have their temperature taken when they come in the door. They have to wear a mask. We have to maintain that 6-foot social distancing, or something like speech. They have to be behind plexiglass, a plexiglass divider. So it's a different environment, but it's also excellent for us that we're doing this. Not very many districts As a matter of fact, the last I knew, there wasn't another district that was doing it. That could have changed, but it's going to be a good trial run for us in getting ready for the fall. And I think that feeds right into our COVID return to school planning team. We have a small central team that will have our first official meeting next Thursday. Karen Hirsch is serving on behalf of the Board of Ed on that committee, along with, we have our doctor consultant, Katie Noble, who actually is contracted with the school district as a medical professional. We also have Mary Keller, who is our head of nursing in our cabinet. And what we'll be hearing from are all of the different focus groups who have been doing lots of work over the last, I'm going to say weeks or months, looking at everything from food service to transportation, facilities, what type of disinfectant, how are we going to disinfect, looking at, HR staffing, how are we going to handle some of those challenges that we may have, and looking at teacher certification, if in fact they keep groupings really small. But we will have a detailed update, for the board that pulls all of those focus groups together. So I just want you to know that work is fully underway, which it has been for a while. It's going to be complex work getting us ready for September. There is a tremendous amount to do, and the state still says they will be providing another guidance document. And we are hoping that there's some loosening of things like transportation. We're hoping that they will, again, have the waiver of the 180 days. And as a reminder, we're not in Connecticut. We can't do distance learning unless there is an executive order, because it's not allowed in Connecticut. So we're hoping they get all those things in place soon so that plans are moving in the right direction. And I also just want to mention, I have two more things. One is the board and myself, we're getting a lot of emails about a call to action. And it really is to review our curriculum, our professional development, student voice in response to racism, implicit bias, and understanding of diversity. And I want the Board of Education, I think, and our community to know we are extremely committed to this work. And right now we are looking for a diversity consultant to help us so that as we continue to move forward, we want to have really good community conversations, student conversations, teacher professional development. And, as one of our consultants was saying the other day, it really, and this is a consultant that's been working for family and community engagement with us. And it resonated with me because she had pointed out that the relationship between home and school is so strong. This really has to be a community conversation because schools have children 12% of the time in a year. And it's strange because when you think about it, it seems like they're with us all the time. But it really is a home and school partnership. So I want people to know that we are moving, and I have a few people that have emailed me directly to say, I really want to be engaged in this work and part of some focus committees. So I'm keeping all of those emails and we'll be reaching out to you. And last but not least, I just had to end with the fun stuff. What a great end to the school year. I was so pleased with the 5th grade moving up, the 8th grade moving up. High school graduation was just fabulous. So, congratulations to Mr. Mayo, his team, and most notably, I know Karen Foster spent weeks and weeks really working to make graduation something special. And we're so proud of our class of 2020. And if you haven't watched the virtual part, go watch it. Our students were so articulate, and it was a wonderful full day. It was just really a joyful day. So congratulations to all of our graduates, and also thank you to our staff and to our teachers. This was an unprecedented school year, and we are just so grateful. And thank you to our families, PTA, and all those who supported us throughout this crazy, crazy spring. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Dr. Jones? All right, seeing no hands, we'll move on. The next item on the...
Hey, Peter, I had a question. I'm sorry. Let me turn this off. Or maybe it's a question for Karen. Are we going to have committee reports tonight?
No, we're not going to have committee reports, but the reopening committee is not meeting till next week. So,
okay. So I guess this is a question maybe for Karen, or I don't know who should answer it. It seems to me that what's going to happen, how Greenwich is going to organize its schools and how we're going to deliver education in September is a critical question for the board. And I think the board has to be providing some guidance to the administration about the expectations of the community. Since we've kind of, been uncovided, so to speak, and people are out connecting, I'm hearing interestingly from parents, 50% are saying you must open schools, ignore the COVID. They don't really mean ignore the COVID, but that's essentially, they don't think it's as much of an issue. And then you get probably the other 50% who are maybe at the other end of the spectrum. And you kind of have degrees in between, but there's probably two big points of view on this. I wouldn't know how to make a decision, which the board has to do sometimes this summer, based on a recommendation we'll get from the administration on how we're going to deliver education without more detailed information about parents. My view is this has to be a child-centered, parent-centered strategy, how we deliver education. It has to be centered first and foremost on the kids at Greenwich. And the piece of information I think we need is we need to understand from parents how many parents would actually send their kids back to school in classrooms before there was a vaccine, and then how many parents would send their kids back, one or the other. And I don't know what those numbers are. I don't know if that's 80-20, 20-80, 50-50. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know what the data is, and I feel really uncomfortable that we would be making decisions with anecdotal data. Now, we only have 75 days to figure this out because school starts September 1. So we're now at a 75-day window. And it seems to me we need to survey parents to collect data, real hard data about what Greenwich parents would want and expect, so that we as a board could probably discuss it and give some guidance to the administration. I'd hate to wind up in a scenario where the administration's going away with a planning team, they come up with something, and then we're finding out in August it's going to miss the mark on the community expectation, what parents want, what parents will do, how the community expects their kids to be educated. So I don't know if that's something for Karen to do on behalf of the board, but I think we have to get information quickly so we can be better, we can do a better job of governing, which is our proper role.
I might just speak to that, Peter. We are planning on surveying our community. We debated about 3 or 4 weeks ago about doing it, but because COVID keeps changing, I don't even think it's so much, the vaccine is one part of it, but we also feel like we're whether in a phase 1, phase 2, and part of the health guidance was there have been so many large group gatherings over the past few weeks that waiting another 14 days to see if we were going to start spiking like Florida and some of the other states, because if that happens, I think we would get a different response perhaps by waiting just a few weeks than we would have got even 2 weeks ago. So we made the choice to kind of wait on that, but that's part of our communications focus team we'll be pushing that survey out.
So can you share with the board before you send it what the survey is?
Sure.
And by what date would you be sending it?
Right now we have meetings that run through July 16th, and that is something that we more than likely will, I would say the second week in July. We want, when the health professionals tell us they think that the large group gatherings have not impacted or they have impacted, and again, it's that 14-day kind of window, we'll feel better about getting good information, because we're trying to make sure we listen to the health professionals as well about what's really going on. because that does make a difference in how parents feel about sending kids back. Because when they talk about the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, one is incredibly one aspect is incredibly restrictive and one is a little bit looser. And even as recent as last week, at the beginning of last week, the state was saying that there would be a requirement that we would all handle this in exactly the same way. By Friday afternoon, by the time I went home on Friday, they had changed again.
Well,
And
that's not going to happen.
well,
My only feedback to you, Tony, would be, or Karen, I think waiting another month, July 16th, to launch a survey, you wouldn't have answers back for another week. That's going to put you the week of July 21. That's probably too late. This is all an imperfect process, and it's changing. But my point is I think, well, the board needs to play a role in this, in providing some guidance and steering, and it needs to do it sooner rather than later. The last thing your team needs is us coming in at the nth hour when you've been working on it for a month and a half and saying, no, that's not going to fly, go do something different. And so I think engagement early with the community, I realize you're right about imperfect information, sooner is better. You've also got parents who seem to want to express a point of view, and I'm not sure they know how to do that. Obviously, we can say, send a board, here's our email, so on and so forth. But that's not as effective as surveying. So anyway, that's my input has to be a parent-driven process, and you got to get input. We need to get input from parents sooner rather than later, and then adjust from there.
And focus groups are another part. I was on with PTAC officers today, and that's part of it as well, as the focus groups with PTAC, with the community in general, and trying to get kind of face-to-face also contributions on where we're headed, and so the board will feel comfortable. And that's why Karen is serving on that task force on behalf of the board. I mean, I would expect that we're probably going to have more than one special meeting just to talk about this issue. So, I mean, Peter, I think has said, Peter Bernstein has said we're probably going to have to meet in the summer a little bit more than we anticipated.
Have your calendars ready during agenda planning. All right, Mr. Kelly.
Yes, thank you. Joe Kelly here. Tony, I have a question. I've been meaning to ask this question because all the way along I've been making a statement that we would be much better at distance learning next time than we are this time, because we had no chance in the past to actually learn anything from that or learn something from the past. So basically, in a perfect scenario, forgetting about state laws, say they waive state laws, and we'd like to design what in your vision, so we can hold some sort of standard to what our expectations are. How would you envision the perfect scenario if we ever had to do distance learning again? Walk us through or talk us through what parents would expect, so at least now they know and can expect what it would be again, because we've gotten a lot of criticisms because it was rather inconsistent. Some teachers did an absolutely great job. Some, for reasons, personal reasons, couldn't apply themselves as much. So there was certainly inconsistency. And tell me, what would the future, or what's the future after all we've learned and all the communications we've had and all the discussions we have? Give me what we expect next time if we have distance learning, please.
Well, we're hard at work at that even right now in summer school, and it's really looking around the world, looking nationally, what has worked in most districts. What we're discovering as an educational community is that the districts who went, for instance, all Zoom or all Meets, have moved to, we need more asynchronous. It was too much. It was too much for kids sitting still in front of the screen. Districts that had were more asynchronous like us, and then moved slowly towards synchronous. Our parents were wanting, the opposite. They're wanting more synchronous. So it really is a blend of the two, and making sure, and that's why that kind of 50-50 rule we're utilizing in the summer is live video, making connections. I also think, right now we had in the last newsletter last week, there's a survey link, and there's an open comment, what worked well, what didn't work well. And I'm getting great feedback from parents about, we really liked the flexibility or we did not like the flexibility. we do intend to be on more of, if this happens again, we would be more on a regulated schedule. We think that, you know, we've gone through this once, and I think even balancing family and how that works for people, we would be better at that piece, even from the teaching aspect. The other thing I have to consider is that, you know, when I'm looking at the survey, and I read these off to PTA today, they just wanted to know where we were. But basically, we have good and great. It was challenging, made it work, or really difficult. And it didn't matter whether it was pre-K all the way through 12th grade. We have about 24% of our parents that thought it was really difficult. When you look at how many parents right now are saying it was either good or great, pre-K was 26%. So it was very hard for the little ones, obviously. Most of them, you know, picked challenging. K-5 at 33%. So we had more parents that said it was good or great than said it was difficult. In middle school, it was 45%. So it continued to climb. And then by high school, 56% of those responding said it was good or great, compared to 23% still that say really difficult. So our goal is, how do we continue to get everybody to feel like they're having a good or great experience? And I think it is a best practice model. We've already put out a lot of professional development opportunities for the summer for those staff that want to grow their skill sets. And it will be much more, I think, will be much more prescriptive in like the 50-50 rule to make sure that the personal connection is there. I think the other thing that we need to do to be a really high quality program is giving feedback. Feedback is one of the greatest instructional components to where you get the biggest kind of bang for the buck. That's shown in research. And feedback when you're in virtual, I think, was really difficult because you know, if you're in a math class, and I'm going to use this example, I heard a math teacher say this week. If you're in a math class and students working on something, you can walk past them, tap them on the shoulder, and get them to redirect, give them a 2-minute tutorial, and then they're off and running. Virtual, we lost all of that. So that's a component also in the fall. How do we give feedback, and how do we do that more effectively? Because we know for especially some ages, some subject areas, that was an area that was difficult. So we're working on every bit of that right now.
Well, I'm encouraged that you certainly are doing the work, because that's certainly what we need to do to put a plan together. So thank you for that. Certainly you've described the process. But if you could, just sort of in a world of perfection, in just your view, because you're a professional, you've done this for a long time, you've studied this all your career. What would be a perfect, give me a day in the life of a grammar school kid, a day in the life of a middle school kid, a day in the life of a high school kid, just briefly, just if you could be in control of the whole process at this point. I know there's a lot of data still to accumulate, but just in your mind right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think at all ages, having some sort of greeting at the beginning of a meeting, it looks different in elementary than it does in middle or high, but where there's some personal connection at the beginning of the class, I think that's essential. I think there needs to be some sort of live component that will happen if it's a math class or if it's a literacy class. I will say that's a piece right now that we're trying to study, because there's quite a bit of input, again, from school districts that really tried to do a lot of live, that having 24 students on the screen for the math component, for instance, was not as effective as having half of your class and then flipping that. So we're looking at that piece. What we don't want is kids on the screen all day. So it needs to be live. Then you have to transfer to a component that's not live, and perhaps even more activity for children. What's an activity-based learning that they can infuse, so they're also not just sitting, and then making sure that you end again with live, so that the personal connection piece is there. And I don't think it matters whether it's elementary, middle, high, preschool. That component where you're changing it up so that you have live and not live. And their day is not going to be 6 hours. And I think that's going to be really important for families to understand. If children are at home, they're not going to be having exactly 6 hours if you're a 5-year-old, because we don't have everything we have when we're in school, like lunch, transitional times. Bathroom time can take 20 minutes with kindergartners or first graders. So recess isn't there. So it's making sure those are built in. Our teachers have also given us feedback that they want a little more flexibility on the template. That isn't necessarily the way that some of the teachers who really felt successful didn't feel like the template was much help. So we're tweaking that in the day in the life. So it's not as regimented as in, okay, you have to do ST math on, every day for 20 minutes. So I hope that answered the question, but it really is about face-to-face, live, not live, and it's a combination for every class, every day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Ms. Kowalski.
Sure. Tony, just real quickly, can you give me those approval ratings again that you had with respect to what people thought? I wasn't prepared to write them down.
Yeah, and I'll be sending them out too. If you want me to read them, I certainly will. But
Please.
I'm just trying to leave them open for a little bit longer. You have good and great was preschool 26%, challenging, but we got through it 41, difficult was 33. K through 5, 33 thought it was good or great experience. 45% thought it was challenging. 22% was difficult. 6th through 8th, it was 45% had a good or great experience. 31% thought it was challenging. 24% difficult. High school 9 through 12, 56% had a good or great experience. 21% thought it was challenging, and 23% thought it was difficult.
Okay. No, I appreciate those numbers, and I think those are numbers that we need to watch. And I think whatever we need to take the same roll call as we've done to get those numbers over the summer school component, just as to have a comparison so we understand on the distancing whether or not this 50-50 unit works. Because when I look at these numbers, they're not encouraging. To have those approval ratings, even in a presidential election, are troubling. So I think we should focus on something above 50%, far above. I think that's the bar that we should be setting for ourselves, just as a community. But I think everyone has said enough on the components of distance learning, and it's going to be a work in progress. And I look forward to working and to hearing from Karen on as her board representative on this. And I think we should be, it is ultimately going to be a board decision. And I just think we need more information. But what I really want to focus in on this is the racial issue that you touched upon. And I appreciate you doing so. I've read the emails that have come in on the call to action. And I really do appreciate your comments on this being a community conversation. But I would like to, as a board member, I'm interested in the diversity consultant that you're reaching out to and what they have to say and what changes we should be making as a community within the school district. But I do want to harp on the comment that you made, that I do think that this is a community conversation. It is not just a school conversation. And this does need to start at home, and it does need to be reinforced by the schools, but this is something that our kids learn from us. And we as parents and as adults in a community, our children learn from our own actions. And we as a community, if we are deciding that we want to make a change and we want to be a part of this change, we need to do this as a community, and we can reinforce this in the schools. Because as you said, they are in the schools so little. And so while I appreciate those emails and I do agree with them, I think that it is a community conversation that needs to be taken broader than just the school district.
All right, Ms. Hirsch.
Oh, hi. I had wanted to respond. I know, I as a board member who is representing the board on the reopen committee, I will certainly be keeping you guys abreast of discussions as they're warranted, and asking for input as well along the way, as I'll be representing all 8 of us there, not just me. But I have been getting tons of information from districts all around the country, seeing what's being done and what's not. And one of the things that's very interesting, because I was very nudgy about this, and as Dr. Jones will say, is wanting to get this going. And a lot of the districts, not just throughout Connecticut, but throughout the country, that started to make plans and send information out early to parents as to what they thought their schools were going to look like in the fall, have had to pull all of that information back based on changes that the state has consistently been making, which is why Dr. Jones, I think, had said parents and the community won't know for sure exactly how schools will look until about 2 or 3 weeks or so before school starts, because it keeps changing. So I'm happy to share all that information, just because I've been doing tons of research and, getting a lot of input. But feel free to share your input with me as well along the way, parents, as well as, community members and board members. But I just wanted to also thank all of our administration for the incredible work that they did around the graduations. High school was fantastic. The middle schools went above and beyond, as well as did the elementary schools. There were smiles across the district for all of our students. It really was very special. There were a lot of parents who even said they actually enjoyed the car parades a lot more than sitting in an auditorium for hours and hours, at least at the middle and elementary levels. But I just wanted to say thank you guys for all of that hard work. And thank you, Dr. Jones, also for being on top of the discussion that we're going to be having going forward in the community conversation on some of the changes that we'll be making in our schools, hopefully, and getting parent input there as well. I was going to ask as to when you were going to send us the results of that survey. So I would love to just know when you're closing that as well.
Yeah, I actually want to push it out one more time, just because the last week of school is so busy, just in case people missed it. And I had that conversation today with PTAC officers, and they had also said they thought it would be helpful to push it out one more time, just to make sure we're giving everybody an opportunity to respond. So probably another 2 weeks.
Perfect. And I did want to also make sure it was clear. I know that you've emailed this out to the board and to parents in the community that, we are working on multiple different types of plans as to how education will be delivered going into school, much like Mr. Scher and Ms. Kowalski and Mr. Kelly and numerous other members of the board have said. I also am very much looking forward to, if we have to go back into a distance learning model, having more minimums and maximums, doing a much better 50-50 asynchronous and synchronous. So don't worry, I have heard as well as agree with those discussions, and I will make sure to bring those forward.
All right, Ms. Downey.
Tony, thank you for the information. I wanted to follow up on Peter's point from earlier. First of all, given the likelihood of many board meetings this summer and our representative on there, I am confident that the board's going to be involved and have information early and as much as Tony has, as it keeps changing. So I don't share that as a concern. I think that's covered, and Karen is extremely diligent in her communications, and I'm sure as our representative on the committee, we'll make sure we know what's going on. I don't think anyone would say the goal is not to have the kids back in school in the fall. It's the fundamental structure that we operate on. So I think we have to be operating with that as our goal. I mean, you've even said, Tony, right? Distance learning is not the same as in-class learning. So I think the goal is the same. It's just how do we get there and with what constraints? And to that end, I disagree with Peter when he said it's parent-driven. I think it's student-driven. Our goal should be what's best for our students. And I know there's going to be, like he did say, there's a variety of parent views. We're never going to make all the parents happy because parents come to it different ways, but we have to focus on what's best for our students. And the survey to get input from the parents is important and gives us some guidance on where the concerns are and what people's issues are. But I really do think we have to come back to what is best for our students. There's a danger of too many cooks in the kitchen. So I think we have to kind of bring it back to that as this is the way we operate on a normal basis. And that's what we want to go back to. And to the extent we do distance learning, we want it to be robust and useful because we're expecting that there'll be times when we're going to have to use it, but that's not the goal. The goal is to get the kids back into the classroom, to maximize their learning, social, emotional, academic, because that's our fundamental mission. But I do share people's views on distance learning, but I am not concerned about board involvement in terms of moving the process along. So I just wanted to address that.
All right, Mr. Scher.
I feel compelled to respond to Ms. Downey. It is student-centered, but students are under 18, so they're represented by their parents. What always troubles me is this idea, and I hear it from certain people, and I've heard it from the union president many times when she comes to speak to us. I hear it from administrators. It's this implied idea that educators and somehow the 8 of us know better what's good for the children that we have under our leadership. No, we don't. We need to respond to what parents say about their kids, and it needs to be a student-centered process as represented by the parents. I'm always troubled with this idea that somehow the parents are disconnected from the children. So I'm going to leave that. What I was going to say, though, which is the reason I held up my hand in the first place, is I'm a little concerned. There are well-developed models for delivering education over the internet. This isn't a new concept that arrived with COVID. It's been done in many parts of the country for a long, long time. There are entire organizations, large and small, big textbook publishers like Pearson, other companies who do this. There's something called Moogs that do this. They have already developed these models, and they've developed the full pedagogy around them. And it is researched and tested and peer reviewed. What I think we did not do a great job. I think individual teachers did an amazing job. But as a district, and the numbers bear it out, clearly the way we delivered education in the last 13 weeks has been spotty. Some kids got a great education through individual efforts from teachers. Some, I'm hearing from parents, they just got a miserable education. We can't, as a board, sit by and not speak up about that inconsistency in our system. That is our job as board members governing the system. We can't just, stand by, get updates in a board meeting and not discuss this. We have to be more active than that. My feedback to Tony would be, Tony, as I said earlier, you've only got 75 days. This isn't a lot of time for invention. It's a lot of time for shameless plagiarization. And there are a lot of organizations that have already done this and done it really, really well. I would hope that you guys would be spending all of your time, not trying to do it, figure it out inside Greenwich, which we normally do in our summer curriculum institutes and other things. I would hope you're spending at least 50% of your time talking to people who have already figured this out, like commit to the flipped classroom. The flipped classroom's been around for 10 years. Commit to that. Or another pedagogy that is particularly well designed to this. And then I would hope you'd spend all your time trying to figure out how to implement that. I hope we're back in school in September. I really do. I think kids need it for social, emotional reasons that are critical to the success of their education. I hope that's true. But we need to be fully prepared if we can't do that, or half our population doesn't want to do it. And that means, to me, that we have to be setting a standard for excellence that we've always had in Greenwich Public Schools. And we need to commit to that same standard of excellence in distance learning. I think the way we're going to get there faster, because we burned 13 weeks, is to try to look and find the best way it's already done, and spend all our time sucking up that information from others who successfully done this, and then spend all your time trying to figure out how to get 900 teachers to do that, as well as some of the bright shining stars. I can think of a lot of them. Monica Ware as an example, Riverside School. Go talk to her. Unbelievable teacher, did unbelievable things. I'm sure everyone here could tell you about one teacher after another, or administrators. What Angela Schmidt and her team and what Terry Rickey were doing at ISD and North Miamis. Unbelievable. Did a great job. So I realize there's a lot inside, but I'd rather see you take a model and try to spend all your time trying to figure out how to implement it.
And I really appreciate that. And I've been around online learning my whole career, which I know the board knows. And You know, I've overseen a hybrid learning center, and I understand there are national organizations that that's all that they do, but you also have lots of complexities that go along with that when you start looking at implementing. And one of the discussions we were having today is you will not find a top level school district implementing online learning with Chromebooks and teachers who don't have laptops in elementary, they have an iPad. So we're trying to problem solve that, because I doubt there's probably not anybody, you know, on the board meeting tonight that uses a Chromebook most of the time for all of their work. And it's a challenge for us because the devices that we have, we're having that discussion right now. You know, what are the tools that we actually need to also give our teachers the tools to really operate at that level? And it's much more complex than even just the pedagogy. But I do absolutely respect that we're looking all around the world, not just the United States, where people have had success, where it's gone well, and we're committed to that for the fall.
All right, Ms. Hirsch.
I just sort of wanted to just bring up the point that I think Tony made it well, that we are looking for stakeholder input. She's going to be putting forward a survey, but you know, I know I've said this before. It's not our responsibility, our job, I should say. It is our responsibility, but not necessarily our job to get into the weeds and tell our educators exactly how we expect them to teach. What we can ask for are minimums, maximums. We can ask for them to certainly do things in a certain manner so that our educational delivery is the same across the district, across grade levels and across subject matter, which I think is exceptionally, exceptionally important, so that students in every school at every grade level are getting the same educational delivery from our schools. And I think it's important that parents share with us some of their concerns as well, and other stakeholders, because oftentimes what we expect as parents or as board members isn't always possible to necessarily do at a wider range within our schools. I think it's exceptionally important to realize that it's not, I don't know about anybody else on the board, but I don't have a doctorate in education or in the fact that, of being a superintendent and running our schools. So I look to the fact that those that do are giving us the best advice possible. What we need to do is just make sure that we're not missing needs of certain students that maybe not have been thought of in advance, but it is exceptionally important. That's why stakeholder input is so important. But I just want to be careful that we're not going to be getting into the weeds and trying to direct exactly how things will look. But I do think we should be sharing input on our thoughts. So that was all I just wanted to say.
All right, Ms. Stowe.
I think, Tony, I'm confident that you heard us loud and clear. Our somewhat concerns around distance learning. We improved every week. It sounds like you now have a plan for the summer that you're implementing in case we do have to continue in some sort of distance learning model. But more than anything, I know it'll be 100% of your time, but right now I know your 100% of the time seems to be trying to find savings because of the budget issues that we're having. So maybe if we could resolve that, we can start to get back to planning for the fall.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so this is Peter Bernstein. I guess it goes without saying, we basically stopped school on a Wednesday, and by Monday we started doing distance learning. That's distance learning with no professional development for our teachers, no sense that the teachers have the right devices. Elementary teachers who have lovely iMacs on their desk took iPads home, and it didn't really work. So I know you've been addressing those along the way, and obviously we took away all the funding for professional development, so that wasn't really there as a tool either. As we move to the fall, hopefully distance learning is something that's only used as an absolute necessity. I mean, there are a couple of use cases. If we have an incident in a school and we basically have to go back out for a couple of days, we're going to want to keep learning going. We don't want learning to stop, so we need to be able to turn on a dime. It's not going to be easy for everybody. Dealing with students that have compromised immune systems that just are not going to be able to join us in the buildings, or students whose families aren't comfortable sending them back yet. There are going to be use cases. We're going to have to address them, but I think we're all pretty much on the same page where we want to go. All right, with that, we're going to turn to the next item on the agenda, which is the superintendent's evaluation. So the board met with Dr. Jones last week in executive session for the purpose of conducting an evaluation of her efforts for the 2019-2020 school year. Tony's provided much needed consistent leadership and management to the district. She brings her positive attitude to her work and adjusts to change. And we've had many changes with that same calm attitude. She is a doer. She hit the ground running on day one and has not stopped. She's taken on long-term issues, made her own assessments, and took decisive action. She has an amazing work ethic and energy and has been building a strong team so she can delegate more and focus on other areas. Communications with the community in general and specifically with parents has been a particular strong suit. The transparency is certainly appreciated. Now, Tony will meet with the board members one-on-one more frequently and ensure members keep informed. She's also earned the respect from the other town bodies and members of the community for both her responsiveness and openness. Tony has emphasized the importance of seeing what is happening in the classroom, spending time in our building with our students. The identification of a new tool by Tony and her team for rapid assessment and focused intervention should continue to drive personalized learning and student growth, and it's a step in the right direction. The tool may play a key part in helping assess K through 8 students when we return in the fall so that we can ensure that they are on track with their work. Her attention to the special education community and willingness to take a fresh look at how we deliver services are welcome and appreciated. The special education audit is obviously a priority item for the upcoming year. And 2 items took a disproportionate amount of her time this year, the budget and COVID-19. Tony stepped into the superintendent role just in time to build a budget for 2020-2021 school year. She made the necessary adjustments to bring in a budget within the BET guidelines. Obviously, since the adoption by the BOE, the world has changed, and Tony continues her efforts in collaboration with the board to bring the budget where it needs to be now that the RTM has voted, while still supporting our strategic goals and focusing on students in the classroom. It is also important to note that Tony and her cabinet voluntarily declined raises for 2020-2021. In terms of COVID-19, many districts came to a complete stop. Tony was able to get the state to approve our waiver to move to distance learning 2 days after we closed. She will be spending much of her summer, as we just discussed, focusing on reopening schools in the fall. To the extent we do continue to use distance learning, Tony understands the board's desire for more stringent standards around the use of live and recorded sessions and more direct connections between teachers and students. She is already using summer school to pilot with the 50% live, 50% asynchronous learning, which will inform our efforts for the fall. With all the uncertainty in the world, we are happy to have Tony continue to provide stable leadership for the Greenwich Public Schools as we move forward. All right, with that, we're going to move on to our action items. The first item is the budget adjustment for 2020-2021. It's listed as an action item based upon a recommendation from the superintendent and Sean O'Keefe, our chief operating officer. We're going to hold a discussion on that item tonight, and then at the appropriate time, I believe Ms. Kowalski, you're going to make a motion to postpone it until a future meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tony and Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. I'm not going to read through the whole sheet because the actual budget reductions have not changed from the last sheet. It's a little bit different format tonight, and Mr. Antonaccio is going to share that screen for you so that you can see how it's laid out, just trying to help the public and help the board understand where we are as of today. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. O'Keefe tonight, just because it's really more about numbers and process right now. As you know, at the last meeting, I said that, we were really looking towards that bus transportation. And is that going to be able to help us? And I think Mr. O'Keefe wants to walk you through what that could look like for the board. And again, this will be posted when this meeting is over tonight, because it is an updated version, because we work on these literally hour before the board meeting. We keep working. So Mr. O'Keefe.
Thank you. The first chart really is just a level setter. You can see that the Board of Ed approved budget at 2%. Since that point in time, there were 2 adjustments. One was to shift cybersecurity expense from operating fund to capital of $198,000. And then the second item was the vote of the BET and the RTM to reduce the budget to a flat level year to year. So that change was a total of $3,068,784. And you'll see that on the next chart. So this is really how we, the goal is to close the gap of $3,068,784. The first 2 sections, you can see in yellow in the middle column, adds up to 1,945,416. That's the exact number that Tony had talked about at the June 5th meeting. It was the chart that was presented and posted afterwards. It's broken up into two areas. The first area are things that we're very comfortable in doing, adding up to 1,250,000. And then there's a second category of headcount related expenses that we're less inclined to do, adding up to 695,000. So the combined total again is 1,945,416. Now, I just want to just shift gears a little bit and give you a little bit more background on where we are projecting to end the year. In our last meeting, we were talking about savings related to energy, to professional development, substitute expense, and savings associated with the freeze that we put in place in February. And we were waiting on where we were going to land with regard to the contract renegotiation with STA as a result of the executive order. We were able to finally sign the contract 2 Mondays ago, and I'm happy to report that we're probably have the best result of, I would tell you, any other district in Connecticut. When I did consult with quite a few of the districts, and they were all settling on between 60 to 85% of the remaining budget from the March to June period. What I mean settled on, meaning that they paid out to the transportation vendor. Where we landed was probably in about a 33% range. So the savings associated with this contract renegotiation to the board and to the taxpayers is approximately $2.1 million. So combined with the savings from energy and utilities, professional development, supplies, other things that were frozen, some of the headcount slots were frozen. We had in total a gross savings, when you add all that up, about $3.5 million. Obviously the biggest piece of it was the transportation at 2.1. And that, now recall that we were doing all this because we were anticipating the special ed exposure of about $1.4 million. The way it works out is 3.5 total savings less the sped exposure. We contain that, and we're left with about $2.1 million net savings. And so that's where we are as a start point. And since that time, we have, because we have been frozen since February, we kind of reopened the spending a bit, given the size of the projected underrun. And in the forecast, and you'll see that later, we are actually forecasting to encumber another $977,000. So with that encumbrance, and it's essentially taking spending for classroom supplies, technology that we would need to do, and obviously they would benefit the school system in the next school year. So with that spending reduced from 2.1, we're left with what you'll see in the financials, that we are forecasting an underrun of about $1.2 million. Now, going back to the chart, you see the two categories of reductions. The first one that we're very comfortable in doing, adding up to the 1.25 million. And then the other category of headcount related that we're less inclined, as I said earlier. If we were to continue, if you can move the chart down, Michael, so that you can see the 976 on the chart that we've already encumbered and is included in the forecast. If we were to encumber an additional $842,000 of that savings, we could avoid having to do the headcount related reductions and still be able to achieve the $3 million reduction. And we are already working on identifying those areas where we could encumber funds this year and therefore reduce the need for the budget in 2021. I'll stop there. Take any questions.
All right. Ms. Stowe.
All right. Wow. Okay. This is a lot of information, obviously. But what at last meeting, I think you did a good job level setting, Sean. At the last meeting, are you getting the background noise? We were at 1.9 million of savings, and I see now how you've broken it out. So that's helpful because you have the 1.25 of sort of stuff, right? And then the impact to the classroom is sort of, I know it's all impacting the classroom, but the next part is headcount related. So you've broken that out. And I think at the last meeting, we all sort of signaled if you could, we wanted to stop there, right? We didn't want to keep looking any further because we were hopeful that you would find these savings. And I just think we need to pause because we're not in a room, but Sean, for a second, 60 to 85% of where other towns were settling, and you managed to negotiate us to 33%. So just for a minute, if we could give you your review now, but I think we'll leave that to Tony. I think you've earned your keep right there. So thank you, number one.
Thank you.
So if I understand this, right, we can now, you have 970, so we basically had another 1.1 million to go originally, right?
Correct.
You, with items that you can encumber now, right, you get to like 976. So that's close. We're close there, right? With that additional amount, you were right at the last meeting. We basically didn't need to go any further, right? Because we can now encumber these items, IT facilities, textbooks, printing, graphing supplies, etc. And that gives us a little bit more room for next year. And if we basically can utilize now the additional savings you found is basically a result of this bus contract, additional items you can encumber, we will not have to be faced with the tough decision of making these programmatic changes at this time. Am I right about this?
That's correct. If you stop at the 1250, you can see in the orange colored column, that's what the to-go amount is to get to the $3 million. So we would still need about $1.2 million and I'm sorry, $1.8 million to get to the 3 million. And that's what is in that box, the initial 977 that we've already encumbered. And that if we utilize an additional $840,000 of our savings, we could actually close to the $3 million without having to take those headcount reductions.
Well, I have to say that that seems logical to me. I mean, I've always felt like, we've been getting a lot of emails over this past week or so, in favor of all these programs. And I think we've been talking about doing program reviews for a while. I think we should continue to do that, but we don't have the data at this time to make these sort of programmatic changes. So thanks to your good work, and I know this just came in, this is like fresh, fresh off the press. To me, it makes sense to kind of do sort of the stuff that adds up to 1.25 and then hopefully encumber these other items and not have to reduce these programs and therefore people.
Right.
Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Right.
And after all that, we still leave a little bit left over to send back.
To the town. That's a good point. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Downey?
Sean, wow, I'm going to have to echo Kathleen. Wow. You can negotiate anything for me at any time if that's the kind of results you get. I'm really impressed and appreciative and thankful for your diligence and your skills in getting a deal done at a very favorable terms for the district. So kudos to you. So I agree with Kathleen on a lot of levels. I like how you've broken it down in kind of the stuff versus the people. And I think my guess is, I mean, in my personal view, the programs and the staff should always be the goal to keep. Rather, the stuff is, it can come. I mean, I know nobody wants to be making these changes, but if we're going to have to prioritize, to me, we should be trying to prioritize and do whatever we can in regard to maintaining the programs and the people that are headcount related, like the second grade help, like the foreign language, like media assistance. So I'm hopeful that these additional encumbrances can be found and we can then meet the numbers that are needed and be able to maintain that. And especially because we don't want to be making these kind of rash headcount decisions on a programmatic basis on a really short time frame, you know, kind of making them quickly in response to this budget without being thoughtful. To the extent we do have to make decisions next year, I'd rather do it with the luxury of a little time and analysis rather than saying, okay, we've got the June 30th clock ticking and we have to make a quick decision and let's just pull a little bit of this and pull a little bit of that. And I know you guys have put a lot of thought into it, but it still has been rushed because we're talking about, you know, 6 to 8 weeks since this all started, which is not long. So right on board with if we can keep those at all. My question is kind of a next steps that you would have, you know, in terms of these additional conferences from the board. How do you see the process and the timetable, given that we are now sitting here at June 18th?
We have all of the folks at central office. We have all of the schools involved. We've distributed their current budgets and asked everyone to identify areas where we could spend money in 1920 and therefore give up 2021 funds. So they're all contributing. We've got a Google Doc going, broken out by school and by function, and we're making really good progress.
Great team approach, Sean. Thank you in getting it from everyone at every level. Thank you. That's it for me.
All right, Mr. Scher.
Hey, Sean, I used to think I was pretty good with P&Ls and general ledgers, but I don't know, COVID must have taken something out of my brain. I'm trying to crosswalk this back to the first page. And so we essentially needed to solve a gap of 3068, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then our budget closes, right? And we're not allowed to start July 1 without a budget that closes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so then if you go back down to the next page, right? I understand this. So this says, add the first batch. I can take 3068 minus 1250.
Yep.
Right? And so that leaves me with, I don't know, roughly
1.8 million.
What is that, the number on the far right?
Yep.
That's the money to go to solve, right?
That is the amount to solve to get the $3 million without having to tap into the headcount.
Okay, so now I'm going to jump. I'm going to skip this middle category for a minute.
Yep.
Okay. This 976 in spending, right? Which is, you're saying people have already been out spending.
No, not yet. They're identifying the spending.
Okay, wait.
And
Hold on one sec. I need to back up then. I think I heard you say that we have a surplus of in this year's budget of 3.5 million. Correct?
Before containing the 1.4
Right.
spend.
We had a surplus of 3.5. You burned 1.4 of that on special ed, right?
So net savings 2.1.
2.1 left, right?
Yep.
Yeah, 2.1. So this 976 is going to be spending from that 2.1, right?
Correct. That brings it down to 1.2.
What, she had 1.2 left. Okay.
Yep.
So if you burn the 976, you add that, you deduct that from the 1.8, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So it's a direct crosswalk, those two numbers.
Essentially, if you look at the 1.8, take away the 976,
Right.
you're left with 841,740, which is what we would need to solve to
841.
close to the 3.
Fine. So you've got 841 left over. And your choices on the 841 are, you get approval to encumber more. You burn 695 of it from the program reductions, or they're saving someplace else. Right?
Yeah, we save from the head count plus an additional 150,000, or we take 841 out of supplies, equipment, whatever.
Out of something else, out of transportation.
Yeah, exactly.
Different job cuts, whatever.
Absolutely right.
Okay. So is the 976 all approved by the controller?
No, nothing has gone to the controller. This is all essentially a proposal as to how we close the $3 million gap.
Okay, so what happens if they don't allow these encumbrances because of what the items are? Then we're back to the drawing board?
Well, I mean, this is we're spending our current appropriation,
Yeah.
which is up to the board of
No,
Ed.
I totally agree with that part. So if I guess I'm concerned about the word encumber, right? Encumber, what I'm saying is these IT hardware and supplies, right? We could order those, buy them right now, and then by the time the PO's out there hanging out, it's a this year expense.
Correct.
Whether it actually hits accounts.
Correct.
receivable.
We encumber the funds,
Right.
issue a purchase order,
Right.
put the order in, take delivery, and then pay the bill.
Okay. And these additional 2019-20 encumbrances, do we know what those items would be, and would they, like, what would they be? Do we know? We don't, it says TBD.
Well, that's what we're collecting now. I mean, right now we're up probably to about $1.4 million. We're still working it, but it's classroom supplies, facilities and custodial supplies, building materials that we know we're going to need, some technology subscriptions.
But it directly comes out of what was planned in the budget that we approved, right?
Correct. For next year.
You know where I'm going. I'm trying to figure out if it's planned in the budget or it's different spending, because if it's not directly crosswalking to planned in the budget, then it doesn't help us solve, right?
Here's an example. Say we budgeted $25,000 for copy paper in the 2021 budget.
You buy that now.
You buy it now.
Correct. Okay,
So we transfer $25,000 to whoever ordered that copy paper from, say, transportation, where we have excess funds, and then we pull out $25,000 in the 2021 budget in the same place.
So you're confident on the 976, and the 841 is the remaining total gap. Is that correct?
The 976, when that number was derived, it's not fixed yet, but we have probably about $1.4 million, $1.5 million in total and growing. So we're looking at it. We would need a total of $1.8 million, and we're already more than halfway there.
Okay, that's great.
And obviously, we need to review it in detail to make sure we're not doing anything that we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I just want to be sure we don't get whammied. And I know you have an opinion based on your experience. I just don't want to get whammied where the wheels come off this car at the nth hour and we're out of runway to deal with it. And that's the only reason I keep raising this concern.
Yeah, I totally understand the concern.
Yeah.
It's all very late in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. it is late in the game. I wish we'd worked on it earlier, but we are where we are, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Just as a board member voting, I'm not going to vote for a budget. And I kind of have made this clear week after week, shocker. I won't vote for a budget that cuts FLES, media assistance, ALP, or PE. I'm just, if we have to find savings, you got to go find it someplace else. So maybe I'm alone in that. As you guys know, I don't mind being the lone vote on the board. It doesn't matter. I want to believe all my colleagues are in the same place. But I'm putting a stake in the ground. I'm not going to vote for a budget that cuts these things in any way, shape, or form. And I'm only saying that is because I think there are other decisions we could make. The strategy you're pursuing here, Sean, is a great one. I support it 110%. But if there's
Really appreciate that, Peter.
if there's any cuts we have to make on top of this, we need to look other places. And I've said many times on this, in these board meetings, where I think you have to look. To Joe Kelly, you can't complain about the problem if you're not willing to offer a very specific solution to it. And so keep going. From
Thank
a
you.
process perspective, when will this all be secured so that we'll know? I know we have a meeting next Thursday, I think we do. So when will we see the next secured version of this document?
I think that's when you'll see it. I mean, we don't have much time, obviously. We have to have a budget in place by June 30.
Yeah, well, the good news is now it's strictly in our hands. No one else has to touch it. Okay, thank you. Keep up the good work. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate your comments.
Peter, just in response to the timing issue, if Tony and Sean felt like they were ready to go earlier, we'd schedule a meeting. So I think that's the right way to go here. All right, Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for your Herculean efforts and your success in finding these savings and with negotiations. So I really appreciate that. And also, teaching, it really is about building relationships with students, and students learn when there's a connection and trust built between student and educator. If we can maintain headcount and educators and programs, and that's a major step in the right direction, and I'm all in favor of that. So I just want to share that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I tried to raise my hand. It doesn't show up in the right order, so I'm going to go, and then Ms. Hirsch, you'll be after me. Sean, great job. Utterly amazing. Basically, getting to where you got. One thing I want to confirm, the reason for what the governor did was he basically wanted to get the bus drivers rehired. So can you just confirm that happened?
Yes, we've confirmed that every driver has been rehired.
Fantastic.
Effective May 26th.
All right. So obviously we did a lot of work to get to our 2% budget. We cut positions during the year. We froze positions. We stopped certain spending. Basically, to get to the $3 million, we've tried the early retirement program. We've met with our unions. We're still looking at our bus routing. There's empty desks at Havemeyer. That's never happened in my tenure on the board. I think that's a testament to the work you guys are doing. But at the end of the day, right, we need creative solutions to problems, and I think you've done that. I don't think anybody wants to cut positions. I think I've said it time and time again. Our hand is being forced, and we're dealing with the cards we've been dealt. And I'm glad to be in a position where we may not need to make these what I consider unnecessary cuts to personnel. I really think that's an issue, and programs in our situation basically equal people. We've been slicing and dicing from our budget for years to stay within the BET guidelines, and basically we're now down to how many people we have, and that is what's being challenged of us. Tony, I did want to ask you one thing, because I think there was some confusion about the foreign language studies, and I think in the last meeting you clarified that for those schools that were IB or magnet schools that had foreign language studies, the idea of that recommendation would not have been to remove it in the lower grades. Can you just confirm that?
Yeah, and I think that was part of the board discussion as well. Initially, it did have a reduction if you go back several weeks ago, and I think the board was pretty clear that wasn't, I think, something that we were entertaining. It's interesting because coming from an IB system, if you made a reduction, it does start when they're 7 years old. So you can make a reduction in K1. You can use apps, for instance, in second grade. It doesn't have to actually be a live teacher. You don't lose authorization just because you go into September and it's not in place. So I think and I'm just sharing that because several of you reached out and asked me questions just about IB authorization. You go through authorization every couple of years, but I think it was very clear the board wants to maintain that in the early grades at the magnet schools because it's such a part of the magnet. So.
Thank you, Tony. And I'll just close out my comments by saying the districts we like to compare ourselves to are not cutting their ALP program. They're not cutting their foreign language studies. They're not cutting their PE staff. This is not happening elsewhere. If we want to continue to be one of the top districts and we want to hold ourselves out to be as such, I just can't in good conscience say that these are cuts that we could make. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Hirsch.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. You basically just ended with how I was going to begin and saying I'm glad we're finding ways and being creative about so that we do not have to reduce programs and headcount, as it just simply waters down the education that our students will be given. And when our students return to schools, and we know that they will return to our schools, they're going to need all of the familiar faces that they can find, especially to support their social and emotional needs. We truly need all of the talent that we have in our district to remain within our schools to provide the services our kids need. I did want to specifically ask, since you're talking about encumbrances, and as we all know, this is not my area of expertise. I just wanted to see what do the other town departments tend to do? Do they do these types of encumbrances? And I know Sean and Tony, you guys were in other districts. Do you find that they tend to do these sorts of encumbrances as well?
Yeah, I've been in contact with many other districts. They're all doing it. I've been in contact with external auditors. It's a very common and routine practice. When you have funds that you can possibly bring expense into the current year and help solve a problem in the next year, it's for the most part very much allowed and routine. There are certain things you can't do. For example, you can't pay for salary. You can't pay for services that would be provided in the following year. If it's delivered in the next year, it's next year's expense. You can't bring that in. So there are some exceptions of what you can do. But purchasing copy paper, classroom supplies, things like that, perfectly acceptable.
Okay. So one other question is, I know, we in Greenwich know that oftentimes when things are cut from our schools, they don't tend to always return, especially when we know that the mill rate is going down this year, and to right size it next year would be to make a big increase. And who knows if that will happen. So anything that we can do to keep our programs and our staff intact, I'm all for. It's also important to sort of note that the 1.8 is really a small amount. It's about a 1% or so of our budget. So I'm glad to see that, if we can utilize that in some way now, the extra, the surplus from our transportation, which, by the way, thank you for your incredible work. It's mind-blowing to know the difference between having you in that seat and what's going on in other districts. So thank you for that. So I just wanted to make sure that this is being done elsewise, and anything that we can do to save the programs in our schools and maybe even buy some extra books for our students, that would be great.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kelly.
Hi, Joe Kelly here. Well, I really like when the two Peters are great. None of us want to get rid of programs or teachers, and I heard both of them voice that, and I support both of their statements that none of us want to do that. And I like the fact that they defended our programs and our teachers. Found money is always good. Sean, thank you for finding that money. That's way cool. Thank you very much. It's important to certainly to understand how that can be used. And I've been having conversations with some of the BET members, and they certainly want to cooperate with us when they can. And just contrary to what you might read in the papers, I think all of the BET members like children. So therefore, I think they'll all try to do their best to work with us if we do have some found money due to the skilled negotiating that Sean has taken care of. Then whatever way we might be able to move forward with that found money to help bridge the gap, to preserve programs and teachers, I would hope, and certainly with some of the conversations I've had with the BET so far, they seem to want to work with us. So hopefully with this extra money and maybe the financial situation stabilizing, once again, me the optimist, things are looking pretty stable. With that all happening, maybe we can find some, with money maybe we can't spend in this year's budget, money that's left over that has to carry over, maybe we can use that to help us accomplish what we need to accomplish. So I'm optimistic. I'm encouraging compromise, and everyone, Sean especially, Tony as well, but good work on this one. So hopefully we get this resolved. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Michael, can you scroll the sheet up for a second? Oh, no, sorry, all the way to the bottom. Sean, I think the one thing that didn't get pointed out, so there will be still money going back to the town, right?
Yeah, based on all this, current estimates between $300,000 and $400,000.
Which is not so far off from what we returned last year.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Kowalski.
Sure. I'm not sure what you're looking at the moment. So if it's funky, I apologize. But Sean, I just wanted to echo the comments that have been said so far. I think you've done the impossible. I was not going to be a vote to cut the programs, the ALP program, PE or foreign language. I think the ALP and the foreign language programs make Greenwich distinctly unique, and they are what makes our education, the foundation of our education, what people are looking for and why people move here for those programs. So I was not going to be a vote for those, and you have found a way to save that, and I commend you for your work. Several months ago, you miraculously found money, and you'd made a comment in a meeting about, I can find the money someplace. And this was relating to a special ed issue, and you came back and you found it. You have a talent and a gift, and I'm glad we have you on our side. And this is, I wish I could be the fly on the wall when Tony gives you your review, but Tony, just as a footnote, it should be a good one. But I wanted to say, this is good news. This is great. This is great for Greenwich. And you've done some really great work here, and I appreciate the good job that you've done in digging in and obviously thinking outside the box in all of the ways that you have. And for that, I'm grateful. So I appreciate what you've done here. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much, Karen.
And let me just point out, Sean is one of the people who gave up his raise for next year. So he's generating savings everywhere. All right, with that, Ms. Stowe.
Thanks.
Yeah, our two leaders, Tony and Sean, are keeping us afloat, so thank you. I just wanted to make it crystal clear. We basically need to find $841,000, encumber another $841,000. I imagine there are a lot of things because we froze spending earlier this year. So there's probably many items anyway that we should be encumbering now. But so if we do that, we can keep our programs, our teachers, and continue to serve our students well. So to me, this is a no-brainer, and we still return money to the town. So, perfect. Tell us when you need our help, but otherwise, when we get to agenda planning, Peter, I think we try to schedule something for early next week so we can hopefully close this out. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Stowe. All right, we're going to move on to our next item, which is the, actually, Ms. Kowalski, did you want to make a motion to postpone to a future meeting?
Yes, so I would like to, I'll turn my video on. I'd like to adjourn any vote as it pertains to the budget cuts and adjustments to a further meeting so that we can have additional guidance provided on what encumbrances could be provided for the 2020-2021 budget.
Thank you.
Happy to second that.
All right, Mr. Kelly seconds the motion. All right, so we're gonna take a roll call. Bernstein's a yes. Stowe?
Yes.
Hirsch?
Yes.
Downey?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Kowalski?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
And Scher.
Yes.
Thank you all. All right, when we do agenda planning, we're gonna talk about setting a time possibly for Tuesday, just so we have it on the books in the event we're ready to roll. Otherwise, we do have our meeting on Thursday. All right, so the next item on our agenda is the strategic plan so Mr. Scher, I think you have the motion for that action.
I do. Thank you. Hold on. Let me get this on the table and then we guess we can talk about it. Move that Greenwich Public Schools Strategic Plan 2015 through 2020. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's this document, right? Including mission, vision, strategic goals, theory of action, strategies, and measurement system as ratified by prior BOE action, be continued by the superintendent and staff until replaced by the Board of Education. The administration shall continue to provide regular updates on progress towards implementing the current plan. So that's the motion.
Do we have a second?
Karen seconds.
Thank you, Karen. All
Okay.
right, discussion. Peter, you wanna?
Let me just put this in context, and particularly for new board members. This is our strategic plan. The elements I rattled off are essentially what's contained in this document. There are other supporting documents that occurred as a result of the board taking action going back to 2015 and subsequent things. So the board has taken a series of votes that essentially ratify and essentially say this is our strategic plan. Excuse me. What the strategy committee did is we got together and we kind of we talked individually, I should say, because we couldn't actually get together. But Karen and I have a consensus view that the board is not likely to be in a position to get together anytime soon to do effective strategic planning. Be great if we could. Maybe we will with Zoom, but right now we think we decided as a group that's not the best thing to do. So that what we want to do is provide clear direction to the superintendent so she knows which direction she's supposed to go. And instead of just saying continue this for a fixed period of time, we're essentially recommending that it continues until it's replaced, either in part or in whole. As you know, we were going down a process that kind of updated it in the whole. There may be decisions of the board that we may want to update one thing, but not all things. So this motion is constructed so that it continues the plan until we take action that replaces it, and it provides clear direction in the public, but also more importantly to our staff who have to execute the plan every day, what they're supposed to be doing and what we're still committed to. So that's essentially the motion, and the motion's written that way to make that a reality. And then all the other things that are needed to run schools, Tony can get back to doing those.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Downey.
I was just going to say, I think it's a great plan, Peter, and I like the idea of saying in whole or in part, depending on how things go. But I think we all agree that while the strategic plan is important, we've got other priorities in the coming months if we need to focus on school reopening and other issues, and that's where our efforts should be placed. And we don't want to rush through a strategic planning process. We want it to be thoughtful with everyone's input and ample opportunity for that. So I wholeheartedly agree. This is the way we should go.
All right, seeing no other hands raised, I'm going to call the question. So the motion on the table is to extend the strategic plan, as Peter read, until replaced by the board in whole or in part. So I'm going to take the roll call vote. Bernstein is a yes. Stowe?
Yes.
Hirsch?
Yes.
Downey?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Kowalski?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Scher?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. So that passes 8-0, and it's good to know we still have a plan. All right, so the next item on the agenda is to authorize the DOE Executive Committee to approve appropriation budget transfers. Basically, we do this every summer in the event there's transfers that happen and close after the board calendar is up. Although our board calendar is a little wonky this year, it might require some more meetings. It allows for some flexibility. So I'm going to make the motion to authorize the BOE Executive Committee to approve all appropriation budget transfers. Is there a second for that motion? Ms. Stowe. And just so everybody's aware, while the Executive Committee does approve them, they all get notice to the board when we get back to a regularly planned program. All right, is there any discussion on the item? I don't see any hands, so we'll take the roll call vote. Motion is to approve the Executive Committee to authorize transfers during the summer. Bernstein's a yes. Stowe?
Yes.
Hirsch?
Yes.
Downey?
Yes.
And the dog votes as well. Mr. Kelly?
Did you just call me a dog?
No, you didn't vote yet. Christina's
Okay.
dog.
Oh, yes, yes.
Super majority vote there. Kowalski?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
And Mr. Scher?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the financial and staffing report. I'm just going to put it on the table by making a motion to authorize the financial and staffing report for the period ending May 31, 2020. Is there a second for that? All right, Ms. Stowe.
Yep.
Mr. O'Keefe, would you like to talk about the item?
We've kind of covered a good bit of it, but I'll just do it quickly. As far as the operating fund, as you know, we mentioned that with gross savings of 3.5, attributable to the bus of 2.1 and other categories 1.4, we're able to offset the sped exposure, leaving us with a $2.1 million net savings to our forecast. From there, we've encumbered or forecasted to encumber about $976,000, which would leave us with a $1.2 million underrun. And should the decision be made to encumber an additional $840,000 so that we do not have to take those headcount related items, we'd end up with approximately between $300,000 and $400,000 at the end of the day. Capital, we're continuing to make progress. In the month of May, we reduced our available balance down by another $600,000. And in the first 2 weeks of June, we reduced it by another $700,000. So we're down to about $20.2 million, which is down about a little over $12 million since December, or roughly almost 40% of the balance in the last 6 months. Last thing I want to mention is school lunch. Right now, our forecast for revenue increased a bit by about $37,000. I guess there was some receipts that weren't accounted for. So we're looking at a revenue forecast of $2.9 million, which, as I mentioned at the last meeting, would be under budget due to the loss of cafeteria receipts since the physical closure of the schools. So we're forecasting to be under by about $1.1 million on revenue. On the expense side, we're forecasting about 3.7, and we'll be under budget by almost $600,000, which is good news. Any questions?
Mr. Scher.
Sorry, I keep turning off my camera because someone in my house is nice enough to bring me something to eat, and I doubt anybody wants to watch me eat. Sean, I had a question about capital.
Sure.
Our run rate in capital, in maintenance capital, is between 10 and 12 a year. And then on top of that is specific projects like Cardinal Stadium as an example.
Major projects?
Yeah, major projects. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, you said we've reduced the capital account to
The available capital balance.
the available capital balance to what?
about $20.2 million as of June 15th.
Okay, and then how much of that is Cardinal Stadium?
I think it's probably,
Is it 4 or 6, something like that?
it's around 3 point something. It's high threes.
So we're ending the year with a full year of capital still in the account, right? So we're effectively a year behind, right?
Well, that balance is made up of about $2.5 million from the 18 full year.
Yep.
And there's another, I want to say another 6, 7 from 19.
Mm-hmm.
And basically 2/3 of the balance is attributable to the 20 allocation plus building committee.
Okay, and now we're about to reload the account, right? So we're going to go from 20 back up to what, 32?
36.
We're going to go from 20. So we've gotten ourselves down to where, but we'll have more than we can consume in a year, right?
Well, a portion of that is obviously building committee projects, which is not huge, but that's by definition multi-year.
Correct.
But yes, we'll be up to 36, but we're continuing to work down the 18, 19, and 20. And, we're expecting a fair amount of work on those balances over the summer.
Yeah, I guess they've done a nice job clearing those, and I never really figured out whether it was work. At one point when we had the Blum and Shapiro, by the way, if you haven't seen those audit reports, you should read them. There was a big question of, was this an accounting problem, or we actually had loaded the account with a bunch of capital that we just couldn't execute all the projects? Whatever's happened, they've done a good job of working it down. And I see what you're saying about we still have projects from prior years hanging out that need to get completed and closed. I was just
since December.
What's a reasonable water level X major projects? So major projects by nature are multi-year.
Yeah, exactly. The building committee and the major projects. Right. As you know, we've closed out all the 16s and 17s. We have a very small amount of 18 and a little bit more of that in 19, and then the rest of it is all current year.
Current year.
And we'll gonna work pretty much a lot of that down over the summer. There's a lot of work going on over the summer.
Yep. Okay, thanks for the update.
All right, and well, related to that, in the package is a quick update. I'll do my best.
Be your straight man.
What's that?
I'm glad I could be your straight man.
I appreciate it. Good transition. There's 3 pages at the end of this financial package. I'm going to quickly go through an update on capital projects as best I can. Dan is here. He can bail me out if need be. Let's see. Cooling tower at the high school. All major components have been installed. There was some delay caused by supply delays related to COVID. But they are expecting to start up the cooling tower tomorrow, so good news there. Field 6 and 7, good progress being made. 50% completion on the gravel filtering layer. Delivery of the synthetic turf will be delivered first week of July. On the PAC flood repairs, all the major components are completed, and now it's just waiting for an inspection from the town. Boiler retubing completed about a week ago. Flooring replacement at the media center expected to be completed by the end of July. The training room renovation has started, and it's estimated to be complete by September 1. Central Middle School, there's a few things going on there. The dust collection system at Wood Lab, the bid needs to be awarded, and the hope is that it'll be done by September 1. The exterior stairs and walks starting next week. Masonry at Central. Let's see, it's in early design stage. And on to Eastern Middle School, curtain walls and HVAC. It's an ongoing project. We're in the third phase of a multi-year project, and the third phase is on time. Canopy railings at Eastern Middle School. It's going to be bid soon. Additional room at the media. We'll start once the funding for full year 21 becomes available. And the dust collection system at Wood Lab, that will be bid, and the bids are due end of the month of June for a summer 2020 installation. Western Middle School, the emergency generator, it's currently working. Emergency lighting is in design phase. The auditorium HVAC currently in design. ADA accessibility, an RFQ due in July. Dust collection system at Wood Lab, it's in the process of being bid. The playground replacement at Coscob is being completed by Parks and Rec and expected to be completed by July 1. At Glenville, stair handrail replacement. The project is designed and bid, and the contract will get started as soon as the funding is available for full year 21. Hamilton Avenue, the field project, officially started June 8th. The site fencing is already installed. The backstop has been removed. The clay infield has been removed, and the turf skinning is to be completed by the third week of July. HVAC at Hamilton Avenue needs some reprogramming of the system to get the full efficiency going. North Miamis fuel tank removal expected to be completely removed by next week. North Street fire alarm upgrade. The project is out to bid. It's due next week. Old Greenwich flooring replacement at Band Art and Media. Completion date is July 10th. The removals and the installation have already begun. Parkway lighting upgrades. This one says waiting for final okay from the town of Greenwich and the Board of Ed. And that's on me. It's something that I really wanted to take you guys through. I think it's an excellent opportunity, not just for Parkway, but for other areas, other schools. I've done this several times. It's a really, by the way, I'm taking the opportunity now to walk you through this. This is a energy efficiency program, incentive program, whereby Eversource has a vendor install LED lighting in your schools, and the vendor pays for it and is reimbursed directly by Eversource. So there's no out-of-pocket by the Board of Ed. By doing that, the Board of Ed, let's just say it costs $120,000 for the vendor to put this in. Eversource will reimburse the vendor for that $120,000, and then they will give us an incentive of about $50,000. So the net cost to us is about $70,000, and that $70,000 is recovered through our electric bill over a 3 to 4 year period with 0% interest. And the savings more than offsets the cost of that annual payment. So if it's $70,000 amortized over 4 years, the annual payment is less than the savings from the energy efficiency. It's a tremendous program. When you look at your electric bill and you look at all those small taxes at the bottom, that's where this funding comes from. And there's about $1 million available for public entities. And so this is one that Eversource has already looked at, has approved us for something, and we've also checked with the town attorney, and they're okay with proceeding. So it's just a matter of, needing to just run it by you guys. If anybody's got any objection, I'm not asking for a vote, but I'm just kind of taking this opportunity to inform you of this program that's available to us, and it will it will not only cover the cost of the annual payback, but we'll have net savings as well of about $5,000 a year in this particular case. So it's a unbelievable program. I've done it several times in Trumbull. It works really well. So.
All right. Thank you, Sean. So I went back. I know you said you looked at the December report. I actually went back to the September capital, the finance report, the capital. So overall total projects in that report were $32 million, and there were projects going back to 2014. So we are now looking at a small handful of projects basically for 18, 19, and mostly 20. And the list you rattled off just basically told me that you're spending this down like a drunken sailor on shore leave. So congratulations for the work that's gone into that. You know, I think the learnings from the Bloom-Shapiro process have been put to practice, and it's nice to see.
Yeah, I just want to say Dan Watson's doing an outstanding job doing this. He knows, he has a sense of urgency, and knows that we want to get this work done on a timely basis.
Yeah, kudos to Dan and the team. All right, Ms. Stowe.
So I had my hand up a long time ago because I was planning to talk about capital, but it's been talked about, obviously to a large extent. And it was just that this is such progress. It's amazing. And I think that what we've learned tonight is that Tony, Sean, Dan, and we have a wonderful team at the Board of Ed. And so thank you so much. Dan, you definitely get some credit here. The other thing now that you added the Parkway bit, not as a Parkway parent, I'll be clear, but as a Board of Ed member and someone who understands actually the Eversource energy efficiency program pretty well, it's a no-brainer, I think. And so,
it is a no-brainer.
Go forth and do what you do, Sean, because obviously you're a financial genius. So thank you.
All right, Mr. Scher.
Hey, Sean, I was going to ask you, the ham envelope project, I'm glad that thing's underway. When was that approved? What budget year was that in?
I don't know. I'd have to defer to Dan on that one. Dan?
Well,
I mean, I could look it up, obviously.
Would you mind?
Yeah, okay, hold on a second.
Yeah, I think, Peter, the part of that delay was the tree warden basically forcing them to go back to the drawing board on the planning and then having to go get reapproved.
I was just curious when we approved it.
I think it was 2018.
Was it in our 2018 budget? So when would that have been? We would have had money for that starting what, July, or was that a special appropriation? Was that an interim appropriation, or was that a part of a budget year?
I think it was an interim appropriation, but it's been so long, I'd be lying if I knew exactly what it was.
Okay. Let's just be
I
happy
think
it's happening.
an interim in 2019, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I don't think it was 2019. That's why I'm asking. Anyway, can you guys follow up with anybody else who's interested? If you could just follow up with an email of when that was.
I got to tell you, Peter, it was an interim while I was on the RTM. So
Yeah.
in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think
And there was a delay between when we voted and the RTM took it up. And then once that happened, we then had the issue with the tree warden. So it basically was a series of fits and starts, but good news, it's happening. All right, Mr. Kelly.
Sean, I'm in the energy business, and I don't think enough a reaction was made by anybody about what you just said about conserving energy. Your initiative, and you said you pointed this out, this was not something that we were doing anyway, but just the fact that you're saving tremendous amounts of electricity for perpetuity is a tremendous thing. That should not be just easily passed by. I'm glad you explained that to us, and I'm glad you pointed out it was your initiative, but that's a wow moment. Please understand that that's a tremendous thing. Thank you very much for doing that.
It saves 55,000 kilowatt hours per year, which translates into about $28,000 of savings. And our annual payment would probably, if it's over 3 years, be about 24,000. So it's a net positive cash flow. It's a no-brainer.
I know you're a numbers guy, but you're saving the planet as well. So thank you.
Okay.
All right, not seeing any more hands, we're going to take a vote on authorizing the financial report for the period ending May 31, 2020. So Bernstein's a yes. Stowe?
Yes.
Hirsch?
Yes.
Downey?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Kowalski?
Yes.
Olson? Megan? All right, we'll come back. And
I just lost audio. Did you call on me, Peter?
I did. We're just voting on the
Okay.
financial report.
I'm a yes. I just lost
Thank
audio, so got it.
Thank you. All right, and Mr. Scher.
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you, Asher. All right, so that's an 8-0. Thank you very much. The next item is transfers, which I understand is not ready. So I'm going to make a motion to postpone the transfers to a future meeting. Is there a second for that? Ms. Stowe, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote on postponing the transfers. Bernstein's a yes. Stowe?
Yes.
Hirsch?
Yes.
Downey?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Kowalski?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Thank you, Asher. And Cher.
Yes.
All right. So that then brings us to agenda planning. So get your calendars ready, folks. First up is our meeting on the 25th. So here's where we are for the 25th. We may put time on before then, but if we don't, budget, special education audit, Cardinal Stadium. We've got the outside lawyer and the architect teed up to come to that meeting now. Transfers if they're ready. I believe PTAC has submitted its written report, so that will be appended to the agenda. And in our chair meeting, we talked to Tony about written reports for other topics that we were going to take up this year to the extent they're available, because we think those are worthy of submittal. And then, we could discuss them at a future date and time if needed. All right, so that's the 25th. Is there anything else we need to add for the 25th?
Peter, I don't understand the Cardinal, and I don't know whether this question for you or for Joe, or I'm not sure who. I don't understand the Cardinal Stadium update. And
You asked for it.
No, I know I did. I know I did. Let me finish. What I don't understand is the sequence of approvals that are required action by the board. So as an example, right? Do we need to do something to approve submitting an MI? Do we need to approve something to submit a request to rezone the property? I mean, I want to be sure we're moving this project forward, which I know we are, but since this will be our major break before the summer starts, I'm wondering if in this meeting it's just an update or there's actual actions for the board to take to move this forward.
So at this point, Peter, I'm not sure there's action. I think it's why we're bringing Tom Haganey, who's our planning lawyer, to the meeting. He's actually a former P&Z commissioner as well as a former Board of Ed member. So it's an interesting combination skill set there. He can discuss that with us. As to your taking the summer off, I'm here to dissuade you of that notion. We will be meeting. So if we do need to take action, we will certainly have that opportunity.
I expect to be paid overtime.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to double your salary of 0. Oh, but in a budget crisis, we can't do that. You can park on the avenue for free. How about that?
Awesome.
All right,
Awesome.
very good. That's what we can give you. But Peter, if action is needed and we can ask that very directed question to Tom, then he can give us some guidance on that.
Well, can you do a favor? Can you or
No.
Joe, sorry, Alzheimer's moment, Joe. Can you guys get with him in advance so that if it's ready for us to take action, we do take action?
Well, I'll tell you.
I know in a special meeting we have a problem of changing the agenda. That's the reason I'm bringing this up.
Right. Look, if we need to action something, we can actually list it as an action item. But I'll tell you what, if members have questions about Cardinal Stadium, why don't you go ahead and send them to Joe, who can collect those questions and see what answers we can get early enough that we can make that difference. All right.
Well, we do meet twice, every 2 weeks, and we discuss where we are, and we're progressing nicely and going certainly the right direction. And I'm happy to get any questions you might have. If I can't answer them myself, I'm happy to contact our guys and rely on them to answer the further question and forward it on to you if that's okay.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so just looking at next week and thinking about the budget and trying to give Tony and Sean as much runway as they can leading up to July 1. Can people look at their calendars for Tuesday morning, the 23rd, maybe from after 10 o'clock?
I have a conflict that starts at 12:30, so.
And I actually have, oh, did I just turn off my video? Sorry. I actually have the field study committee meeting at 11 o'clock with the Parks and Rec Department.
Okay, but if we needed to meet at 10 a.m., is there anybody that has a problem with 10 a.m. on Tuesday?
I cannot do 10 a.m.
I can't do 10 a.m.
Okay, wait, sorry, too many people talking at once.
I cannot do 10 a.m.
Gotcha. Now, Karen Kowalski, I think you were saying something?
Cannot do 10 a.m., but I could do earlier than 10 a.m.
Yeah, like 9, 8:30. Everyone's up.
Is
Karen
there-
Hershey's giving the nastiest look
Not
on me.
everybody is up.
Is there a reason we
I
can't?
don't have a commute, so we're good.
Sorry, what was that, Peter?
Is there a reason we can't do this at a regular time?
Well, we're trying to give them as much runway as possible. I mean, if we want to do it on Tuesday later in the day, I suppose we could do that.
I would vote for not another evening, or we could do like 5 o'clock if that's better, but if that works
Can't
better.
do 5 o'clock. I have a standing meeting on Tuesdays at 5.
That's fine.
What time
Let's do
you
it
free up?
early. Early. Let's pretend
Okay,
it's like
I'm out. I give up. Let me know when it is. If I can come, I'll come.
No.
That was just a suggestion.
This is when we do our scheduling, folks. All right, so could we do 6 o'clock?
in the morning.
No,
Yes.
in the
No,
morning.
I'm up.
Six-
Yes.
Can everybody do 6 p.m.? Then the incentive is to be efficient so that we give Tony and Sean the guidance they need. Anybody have an issue with 6 p.m. on the 23rd?
And then we'll have dinner after together.
Right, we'll all
virtually.
meet
Yeah.
on Greenwich Avenue and social distance and wear masks. Fantastic. All right.
Fine.
Please
Fine.
hold the date. Michael is going to notice the meeting. It is going to be a one-item meeting on budget. And if Tony and Sean feel like they're not ready, we will pull the meeting, okay?
Yeah.
But I want to have that meeting available for them. All right, let's talk about reopening meetings. So we should probably schedule at least 2 sessions in July. Tony, if we schedule something the week of, I guess the 13th, does that give you enough time to have something ready to talk to us about? And by the way, knowing that even if the state gives you guidance, they'll change it the next day. You're muted, Tony.
Oopsie, should know that by now. You're talking about July 13th?
Well, that week, anyway.
Yeah, oh, anytime that week. Yes, we actually have, during that week, I'm just looking.
You said the 16th. You have a
Yeah, we
meeting.
got the 14th and the 16th. We're meeting on both of those days, so. But our meetings are in the morning, so yes, anytime that week.
All
Why don't
right.
you just do it on the 13th, and then Tony has something fresh to take to them on the 14th.
Does that make sense? Everybody want to say 7 o'clock on the 13th?
Fine.
Let's see. Yeah, fine.
Okay, 7/13, 7 p.m. And that'll just be reopening discussion. We're going to try not to muck these up if we can avoid it. All right, and I think we ought to schedule a second one just to have it on the books. I'm looking at Monday, July 27th, 7 p.m.
Fine.
Get the Mondays out of the way. It's like start the week and then move on. I like
Right,
it.
okay. So what we'll do is I'll work with Michael tomorrow. We're going to go ahead and we'll get those meetings on the Google Calendar. We're going to notice those meetings so that they are there and available. We can talk, closer to whether we need meetings further on. But hopefully by then we've got a good sense of directionally where we're going. Make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Anything else before we call on Mr. Kelly? I see Ms. Hirsch has her hand up.
No, sorry. Just trying to.
You're just waving. Okay, very good. Mr. Kelly,
Motion to adjourn.
I'm going to second that motion. We're going to take the quickest vote ever. Bernstein? Yes. Stout?
Yes.
Hirsch.
Yep.
Downey.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Kowalski.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Sherrick.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the time and effort. We'll
Thank
see you again
you
real
all.
soon.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye.